Hey, welcome back everyone. Today I'm going to talk about my current portfolio and how I've performed versus the S&P 500 since I started investing in individual stocks. I've historically thrown my money mostly into broad-based ETFs and just left it there. I've always had a small play account of a few $1,000s, but nothing significant. Previously, when I worked in investment banking, I actually wasn't even allowed to invest in individual stocks. So I kind of just developed the habit of just putting my money into the S&P or a total market index. But back in late 2022, I decided to take a nominal portion of my retirement account, about $35,000, do some stock picking. Today, I'm going to talk about how I've performed in this period, how the S&P has performed, and my thoughts on continuing to invest in individual stocks going forward. So let me kick things off here quickly. Since I started this endeavor on September 16th of 2022 until the market closed on June 3rd of 2024, I have a total return of 87.15%. The S&P during this time has returned roughly 36%. In addition, there's been about 4% in gains for dividends, so let's call it 40% total return for the S&P. During this period, I have actually significantly outperformed the S&P 500. I've only invested in 7 companies during this time, and today I currently hold a position in just 5 of them. And then I have some cash on the side as I look for another investment opportunity. I'm not invested in Nvidia or meme stocks during this time, but relatively boring companies and one big tech. So here it is. The 7 companies I've invested in are Activision, Amazon, Disney, Intel, Meta, Pfizer, and Verizon. The only position that's at a loss is currently my Intel position, which is down 2%. The 5 companies that I still hold are actually Meta, Disney, Intel, Verizon, and Pfizer. During this period, my biggest winner is Meta. I originally purchased 100 shares of Meta for just over $13,000 back in October of 2022. Shortly after making this purchase, the stock dropped all the way down to around $90 per share. I didn't sell and kept holding. By around June of 2023, my position actually doubled in value, and Meta was now trading at $270 per share. At this point, I exited half of my position, returning all of my original capital plus a little extra. Meta has actually since continued to climb in value to somewhere in the mid to high 400s, depending on the day. Today, my Meta position is valued around $24,000, and my cost basis is actually negative at $639, as I recovered my entire cost basis when I sold half my position back in June of 2023. I think Meta was a very clear position to enter for most folks around that time. I know it's a big winner in a lot of people's portfolios. At the time, the market was discounting their entire ads business and was upset with their investment in the metaverse. Now, that's sort of the highlight. I tried to play the Activision arbitrage back in October of 2022. I entered roughly a $5,500 position, held until May of the following year, and this is when Europe said they would block the deal. A lot of criticism was coming from the FTC. So I ended up actually selling that position for a nominal $300 profit, which was about a 5% gain during the 7 months that I held it. The next position I entered was in December of 2022. I started to enter Disney. I've since added to this position 3 additional times in June of 2023, August of 2023, and September of 2023. Disney did have a few bad years, a lot of debt, bad management, park revenue was down from COVID, movie theaters shutting down, hurting box office. Everything told me they're sort of at their low and only have room to go up as things start to improve. I really like the outlook of the company. They have strong cash flow. I felt the market was actually severely beating into them, so I started entering my position. My average cost is currently around $85 per share, and I have a little over 200 shares, bringing my total position to around $17,000 all in. Today, it's valued at around $21,000, which is about a 20% return in the last year and a half. After Disney, I entered 2 more positions, about 6 months apart. I entered Verizon and Intel. This was around the time when there was a lot of concern about Verizon having a big bill coming for lead cables. The stock felt cheap to me based on cash flows. The user base was growing or staying steady. They have a strong market position. Switchers are not super common, and when they do happen, they tend to net out with switchers from other carriers. They have the ability to slowly raise prices with inflation. It's not going to make me rich overnight, but it feels like a pretty good long-term play to me with a lot of upside. I also really like the fact that the dividend was yielding 8% at the time. I'm currently up 22% on this position in just a little under a year. I'll probably hold this position for a long time. I have no interest in getting rid of it unless something fundamentally changes to their business and wireless market. Now on to my one loser, Intel. I really like the turnaround story for Intel. I believe the investments to start fabricating in the US will pay off. The US sends funding their way to subsidize, and I have a weird love for the semiconductor industry. Probably because I actually missed Nvidia. I still like Intel for various reasons and still think it'll play out. I think the chip market's going to be similar to events here shortly. You'll have like US chip makers, Taiwan chip makers, and I think the US is going to feel a lot more comfortable with Intel being based in the US and not at risk of attacks by China, which I think could help them longer term, especially with their positioning in the market. I entered this position around 33 a share back in June of 2023. For a while, I thought it was turning around quicker than I could have ever hoped. It jumped up to about $50 a share at one point, but recently they've missed earnings, lowered expectations, delayed their new rollout, and the stock's now at about 30 bucks a share. I've considered adding to the position, but I feel like I need to refresh my models and read up on them a bit before making that decision, as I haven't stayed super close to this investment over the last 6 months or so. After Intel and Verizon, I briefly entered into an Amazon position. I didn't have much of a thesis in all reality here, other than I use Amazon a lot and they're the largest cloud provider. This made me have little conviction actually, and after just 5 months, in December 2023, I actually exited the position. Ended up having a 5% return during the period, but nothing crazy. Now, the last position I've entered is one that I went into January 31st of this year, and that's Pfizer. I'm currently up about 7%. My thesis here is the market's overly punished them for the drop in revenues related to the COVID vaccine basically going away. They're also not the sexy weight loss company yet. Fingers crossed they figure out how to get that all up and going. I believe they keep delaying trials right now for the GLP-1 drug from what I've read, but their cash flows remain strong. They have a solid business from everything I'm seeing. So there it is. Those are the positions I've entered over the last year and 7 months or so. I've had roughly an 87% total return during that period, largely driven by Meta, but overall I'm happy with all my positions at this point in time. I've pulled this table together to show my individual performance for each position versus the S&P 500 during the time that I've been in it. Meta has significantly performed at 185% gain. Activision's trailed the market, Disney's trailing the market even though it's returned 21%. Intel down, Verizon's outperforming by about 6%, and Amazon outperformed while I held it, and Pfizer's actually about even. I personally think it's a little early for me to draw any conclusions about my performance versus the S&P 500. I think after 5 or so years, it'll be a good period of time to reflect back and see if I could sustain this and make the right decisions to enter and exit other positions as well. I'm planning to invest my last $5,000 that I have in cash in the near future. I've started looking for opportunities, and I think I'm going to try to make some investments primarily in smaller cap companies. Make some videos as I go along with this process for those interested to see how I figure out where I want to deploy my capital. I'm thinking to look at companies and spaces I'm also not super familiar with, just to kind of see if I can learn a new industry and keep things interesting for myself. I'm thinking I may make an update video on this on a quarterly basis, assuming there's anything to discuss of entering or exit position. So if you like this, there will be more in the future, but if not, there'll at least be an annual one where I kind of go through my portfolio and how it's performed over the past year. So one last note, if you have watched any of my other videos, I have talked about an Apple position that I have. That's actually an old employer stock plan. I still hold it, and it's gone up about 1,000%. I entered a position back in 2013 and I've never sold, but for the sake of this video, I've excluded it, as I kind of keep it as a separate set of funds than what I'm doing here. So anyways, thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and if you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Thanks so much.